The last game we're going to cover today will be the Sunday night football game between the 5-1 Eagles and the 5-1 Miami Dolphins. We also incorrectly picked this game. It was a toss up. I really thought, we both really thought Miami was going to be able to pull this one out. But Philadelphia, they were able to pull out a 2-touchdown victory, winning this one 31-17.
Yeah, it was a pretty good game all around. It was fun to watch. It's a little closer than the score sounds, though 2 touchdowns isn't a massive gap. Anyway, but the Eagles did really dominate it towards the end. It could have gotten worse. They could have scored again if they wanted to. Made this one really look bad. How'd they do it? Jalen Hurts goes 23 for 31, 279 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Has 21 rushing yards and a TD. Pretty solid game overall. We'll get to Tua later, and he actually has a very, very similar game. DeAndre Swift led the Eagles in rushing with 62 yards, but it was Kenneth Gainwell that would actually score the only touchdown on the ground other than Jalen Hurts. A.J. Brown demolishes a beat-up Miami secondary, going for 137 yards and a touchdown. And I emphasize that the Miami secondary is beat up because we get to the Dolphins. So is the Eagles. And the Dolphins receivers didn't quite have as much luck against the Eagles backups as A.J. Brown had against Eli Apple and Kader Kohou, especially Eli Apple. Dallas Goedert also had a pretty good day, 77 yards and a touchdown for the tight end, who's had a pretty quiet start to the season. Good game for him against a pretty tough opponent. Darius Slay also would get a pretty massive pick against Tua as the Dolphins are mounting a comeback towards the end. I say comeback, it's not like they were down by much, but as the Dolphins were trying to stay in the game, Darius Slay got a huge interception right by the goal line to kind of essentially seal it. It's not what seals the game, but it would contribute a lot. And the Eagles defense was just able to hold the Dolphins offense down. As we'll see, a lot of these stats don't look as explosive as they've looked throughout the rest of the season. So Tua goes 23 for 32, 216 yards. There's 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Pretty close day to Jalen Hurts. They both play pretty well. Raheem Mostert could not get it going. Racks up just 45 yards, no touchdown or anything like that. Just had a pretty slow day at the office after some pretty big games this season. Salvon Ahmed comes in to back up Devon Achane, and he got a total of 3 yards. So not very good for him. Tyreek Hill did lead the Dolphins in the air, but he wasn't able to get as much going as A.J. Brown got. He got 88 yards and a touchdown, but especially towards the end of the game, wasn't able to get as much separation. Just couldn't get some of the passes off, couldn't get some of the catches he wanted. Eventually just ended up not even always being targeted because of the way that he was being defended. And there's actually a rookie corner on him who was doing a pretty good job. So hats off to the Eagles' backup defense. They did a lot better than Eli Apple. Tua recovered a Liam Eichenberg fumble. Liam Eichenberg is the Dolphins center, if you're not aware. He had some rough moments at the end. Snapped too high, then he fumbled. And back-to-back plays, actually. Things got a little panicky for the Dolphins O-line as they would later allow 2 back-to-back sacks as well. So not the best time for them. Christian Wilkins, however, was the one who was able to get that Jalen Hurts fumble. Pretty good day for him. And then Jerome Baker cured what would be at the time a massive pick six on Jalen Hurts right after Kader Kohou would tip the pass. Jerome Baker takes it right to the house. They're pretty close to the end zone anyway. That came after a controversial missed call, allowed it to be a 17-17 game at the time. And we won't try to get too deep into this, but this is one that's hard to ignore. We've said this on the show before. We don't try to get too finger pointing at the refs, but this game has a pretty glaring discrepancy. The Dolphins were penalized 10 times for about 70 yards. That's not crazy. You could rack that up pretty easily in a regular football game. You'd probably rather not, but it's not the craziest amount to go to. The Eagles, on the other hand, were penalized 0 times for a loss of 0 yards. It's just that's a pretty glaring difference when you don't get penalized 1 time. We were just talking before the segment started. It's pretty easy to accidentally rack up a false start or a delay a game or any of these little smaller things. And they get 0, and there are multiple plays throughout this game where you could easily see that the refs could have called something for the Eagles or maybe should not have called something against the Dolphins. The roughing the passer on Christian Wilkins is probably the best example of that, which Terrence and I have spoken about roughing the passer before. That sure is one of the penalties of all time that gets used. So this one is weird. I can't really say the Dolphins lost because these penalties. I think they still had some things go wrong for them on their own towards the end of the game that took them out of the game. But it's hard to ignore the effect of essentially losing 70 yards and the Eagles not getting anything, especially when you look at some of those calls like the face mask and things like that. So not going to say that the uh, Eagles hand this one to or the refs hand this one to the Eagles. I think Miami shot themselves in the foot towards the end, but there's definitely a bit of an issue with the refereeing this season, and this is a, a, a prime example of that when you have a 10-0 penalty discrepancy.
Yeah, I mean, pretty plainly here, the Eagles were the better team last night. They deserve the win. I mean, we win by 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's not going to be entirely on the refs there. But we are allowed to point out things, and it is. I I can't remember a game where I've seen a team. One team have 10, and another team have none. Or anything similar to that. Seen games where there's been teams get twice as much or something like that, or like, maybe 12 to 5, 12 to 6, something like that. But you just said it. It's pretty easy to at least get a few penalties. I mean, a few false starts, just some random crap, little tiny penalties, like three. You would expect at least three or something. But the one that the Eagles had was, the little thing with Jalen Carter. Um, and one of the players for the Dolphins, they could get into a little bit. That offset. So I mean, that didn't count. Obviously, you just replayed it down. So outside of that, I don't remember if anything else was declined for the Eagles off the top of my head. So, like, yeah, that was literally a zero penalty night for the Eagles, which obviously if you're if you're Nick Sirianni, you're happy about that. But the rest of us are looking at it like, what the heck? Like that's especially the penalties that, you could say should have been called or shouldn't have been called. Roughing the passer, again, you just said it. Like maybe I guess because he took a step, but I thought they're trying to explain it on broadcast. It's supposed to be like, oh, if he takes 2 steps and then hits him. If it's like in a hit that's immediately after, it shouldn't count. But even now, it's getting to the point where it's like, I understand they want to protect the head and neck area, right? So, like, obviously, if you just push him in the head or something like that, after they call that, or if you go for like the legs, they'll call it, or like putting body weight, like it's I respect the guys, the rules experts, guys like Dean Blandino and all those guys that are trying to explain it, to the viewers and not try to crap on the refs. But like at some point, this is insulting our intelligence. How can you call plays like this, call penalties, and act like it's there? I mean, we can talk about the doggone Browns game with the Colts, those penalties at the end. We're not gonna get into all that, but or we can get into the Iowa game too if we want to talk about that fair catch. I mean, there's a lot going on, but just this game, that was bad. And then obviously the penalty. In my opinion, I don't think they should have went for it on fourth anyway. They were lucky that they, like you said, they were able to score that pick six right afterwards. But like I felt like that was stupid because you just had your drive come out the half, you had the punt, didn't get anything really on it. You got like one first down, then you went three and out after that.
Yeah.
I felt like at that point you should have just taken the points. And I understand analytics and all that. If it had worked, obviously they should have called the penalty. But if it had worked besides that, nobody's talking about it. But I just didn't really agree with that call there to go for it. And if they didn't get that pick six, they would have been in a world of trouble because Eagles, they going out and score. And now you'd be down 24-10 if the Eagles still scored there and you do nothing. So, yeah, I don't agree there. So I'm not going to put everything on the refs. I think there were some mistakes by the Dolphins. That right there, obviously, Jalen Ramsey isn't back just yet. Xavier Howard was missing, and it was clearly showing. AJ Brown had a great game, not a crazy game from the rest of the cast, but still pretty good game through the air, and definitely showed that your top two guys on defense, a guy that hasn't even been able to play yet, in Jalen Ramsey, it definitely showed. So that's probably the second part of it. Third part of it, the running game, you mentioned it. Raheem Mostert, just 45 yards. The rest of the guys, one carry for two of 3 yards. That's counted in there. And then two for three. for Ahmed. So yeah, pretty much nothing running the ball, and it seemed like pretty early on, whenever they were trying to run, couldn't get anything inside. It seemed like they said this on the broadcast. After a while, they just pretty much abandoned it, and you couldn't get straight up and down through the middle. So they were going, like throwing a screen over here, doing this, running the back, all kinds of stuff. Just get guys on the outside in space and run up the field, and that's pretty much what Tyreek was doing. And what annoyed me too is like, they took Tyreek off on that fourth down play as well. Because I think if I'm
They
remembering
went to Jeff
correctly,
Wilson.
yeah, if I remember correctly, that was the play immediately after Tyreek having that, weird kind of drop where his like knee hit the ball and everything, and they were like scrambling for it in the end zone. If I'm
Yeah.
correct, yeah. So maybe he was tired. I'm not sure. Maybe they wanted to run something specifically. I don't know. I have no idea. You would assume that you want him on the field because even if the defense assumes you're going to Tyreek, then they'll put more pressure on Tyreek and get it to Waddle and get it to somebody else. Somebody else can step up. But yeah, it's really that. And then obviously the interception would be probably the last thing or second to last thing I'd say. Tua, you had that great drive. You're going down. You're only down a touchdown, and you throw an interception. It was a bad ball, big play. Slay, he gets it, and then immediately, this is pretty much what kills him here. That doggone tush push. I swear, they it doesn't fail a few times on this drive. They're on a 26. You know, you're only up a touchdown at this point. There's still 10 minutes left. And I'm thinking, all right, if they get touchdown on this drive, it's kind of probably going to be over. But 10 minutes left, 4th and 1, they're on a 26. I'm like, all right, they're going to punt. Nope. Tush push. First down. The drive continues. They do it again. I can't believe they did it again. Same drive, didn't matter. 4th down on 37. And then from there, you had that big play to AJ Brown. And at that point, he took so much time off the clock. Even if the Dolphins has went down and scored on that next drive, you still would be kind of short for time there. Probably have to kick onsides, or you might have to, if you want to kick deep and play defense, no matter how much time you had left, maybe. But there's nothing really showing me that they would have been able to stop them. I know running the ball, they didn't have the best game, but yeah, I think I pretty much detailed everything there, why the Dolphins lost. And not to take anything away from the Eagles there. I'm just going through saying, this is why I think the Dolphins lost this game. A game between two teams that I thought had been pretty evenly matched heading into it. You can say what you want about the penalties. You can say what you want about guys missing, but they did win by 2 touchdowns. So can't say anything else, but the Eagles deserve to get that win.
Yeah, I mean, this one is it's just a good football game. I think if you're most football fans would probably enjoy this game. I know the Eagles have a lot of haters, so that might contribute to a little bit to some non-enjoyment. But they both played some good football. Running game for the Dolphins couldn't get going. Eagles did a lot defensively to hold this one down. They were able despite having some backup corners in. Obviously, Darius Slay's still in, but you bring in a rookie, and you still get some good plays. You're still able to hold down Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and they get the yards, but they're not able to make those big plays. Obviously, Tyreek Hill's weird drop where he kneed the ball out of his left hand. Uh, that's not good. He would have scored a touchdown there, and that would have made things look a little different. Maybe the game would have continued in a similar way because the score would have been 17-17 either way had he scored that. When you factor in the big six that occurred just a little bit after, and maybe that doesn't occur, what if the Dolphins punt and put the Eagles somewhere else? So I don't know. This is a good game. I think the Eagles just played well. I think there are some things that could have been missed, or that were missed. I'm not sure how much they would have changed the game. But yeah, I think the Eagles are. This is a good bounce back for them. The Dolphins, I'm not sure this is room to panic. I did think that the Bills game was a rough one. I think this one they played a good game. They need Xavier Howard. They need Jalen Ramsey to get back in so they can fight off some of these teams with these high-powered receivers. And when the running game starts to collapse, you got to find some more creative ways to get the passing game going as well. Sometimes when you just have a bunch of speedsters that are going out and going forward, they're hard to stop them, but not hard to know what's going on and to put stuff there to try and stop them. And sometimes the players accidentally stop themselves. So this was a good game. I don't think either of these teams. Well, obviously the Eagles don't need to panic. They just picked up a big win. They're 6-1 now. I don't think the Dolphins need to panic either. They do have a tough schedule. I think one of the toughest 2 schedules in the league, according to analytics that I saw recently. I think it's like them and the Bengals. But I think if they can get healthy and they can get stuff going back, not really room to panic in this one. There's if you're gonna lose to somebody, the Eagles aren't a bad team to go down to, and you can recover and bounce back and stuff. Pretty good season.